Hi guys, this is Lachette from Scarlet Moon Creations, and this is my June wrap-up video where I will be talking about the last 4 books I read in the month of June and giving you my June reading stats. As always, a link down in the description to the Black Lives Matter card where you can donate to help with bail funds. Protests are still happening regularly. You can also donate to help with legal funds for those who need it, because the police are still being harmful to black people here in the US and other places. There are also links to issues in other countries, including police brutality issues against people of color. So do check that out. As I said before, the links are regularly updated. So if you have not, there might be new petitions to sign and new people to support. There are other ways to help support as well in that link. So don't give up, don't let it be forgotten. This is an ongoing issue. Now, I read a lot. Not a lot, but I almost posted my mid-year freak out tag video, and I hadn't posted this. So let's talk about June. June, for the most part, every book I read in June went for the Olympic Games readathon. Link to the announcement video down in the description. It is a readathon based on the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series, and I last minute decided to join in. I need to amend my mid-June wrap-up video, because I did wind up using Kitty Goes to Washington for one of the Olympic Games prompts, and that was the reread prompt for Hades. So just FYI, I did fulfill that prompt with a book I had already read, but did not plan to use for that prompt. But that's how life turned out. Let's get into the reading stats real quick. In the month of June, I read 8 books. Total pages read, 4,002. 0 hours listened. My average rating was 3.75. I didn't even have to round that up. That's literally how it is on the spreadsheet that I have. No books acquired. Library books. I don't know that I explained this, and so I confuse myself sometimes. But library books, this stat is how many books I've taken out from the library during that month period. So I got 4 library books out in the month of June, and I read 1 Own Voices book. Genres. I read 1 contemporary, 6 fantasy, and 1 romance. Formats. I read 7 ebooks and 1 physical book. So you won't see it here because I returned it to the library because I forgot. I hadn't filmed this yet. Audience. 5 adult books, 1 middle grade, and 2 young adults. or YA. Identity. I read 7 cisgender. I don't normally mention that, but it's on here. And I read 1 non-binary, or a book with a non-binary character. Race. I read 1 black character and 7 white main characters. Sexuality, I should say. That is, I read 1 book with a bisexual character, 1 book with a queer character. Authors, I read 2 books with authors that were new to me and 6 that were not new. The types, I read 1 standalone, 7 series, and 1 of the books I read was a reread. That was The Kitty Goes to Washington. Now, the ratings. I read 1 4.5 stars, 3 4 stars, 3 3.5 stars, and 1 3 stars. So, in general, star rating wise, I think it came out better than last month. But, yeah. Before I go on to talk about the last 4 books I read in the month of June, I just want to say that I will do a mid-year stats check-in video as well as the mid-year freak out tag video. 2 separate ones. So you'll be seeing how my overall year reading wise has been going. If you care, hit that subscribe button and you will see. Now on to the books that I read to finish out the month of June. First up, I read I Wish You All the Best by Mason Deaver. This was my kind of token attempt to participate in the Queer Blackathon, which was a weekend readathon. The main character is white, but they are non-binary. Their eventual boyfriend is a black character who turns out to be bisexual. And I'd been wanting to read this. It was the first book for the NB book club this year, but I never got around to it, and honestly it just sounded cute, so why not? I really enjoyed this. It was a contemporary YA book. We're following a character who basically comes out as non-binary to his parents, and they kick him out of the house. So he wasn't expecting this. His parents are pretty strict, but not unloving, I guess. So yeah, and I think it was in the middle of winter, so I was just like, that should have been focused on more. Like, you put your child in physical danger. You took away all safety from him by just kicking him out unexpectedly at night in the middle of winter. No shoes, no coat, no food, no shelter. Basic life necessities. And so he calls his estranged older sister and winds up living with her and going to a new school, meeting new people, and trying to live his life and figure out, you know, how to be a family, how to have friends, how to live non-binary. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, and I recommend you guys read it. The next book that I read, one of my anticipated reads for 2020, and a very highly anticipated book from many. Finally got it from the library, and that was House of Earth and Blood, the first book in the Crescent City series, a new series by Sarah J. Maas, who is very popular. Book 2, book Twitter in the world, basically. I recently finished her Throne of Glass series, and I'm halfway through the Court of Mist, and no, that's the second book. The other series, I'm halfway through. So, I'm a fan. I'm not obsessed with her books. I definitely see the flaws, and they do take away some of the enjoyment for me. But this is not the worst books I've ever read. But anyway, so I read House of Earth and Blood, and I liked it. I did not enjoy it as much as the Throne of Glass books, especially the end. So, this was highly anticipated by me, and I was disappointed. Let me give a basic synopsis, though, who doesn't know. House of Earth and Blood, we follow two or three characters. I don't even know. I guess the main characters are Bryce and Hunt, because they're the main characters for most of the book. But basically, Bryce is considered this party girl in this paranormal, supernatural city world that Mass has created. She's this party girl who is half human, half fae. She is best friends with Danica, who is very popular and well-known and hard-working werewolf. And something happens pretty early on in the book that changes Bryce's whole life, and a couple of years pass after this incident, and the governor of the city, Crescent City, approaches her because there are new murders being committed that are similar to the incident that she witnessed 2 years ago, and he wants her to help his top dog, his top angel investigator, Hunt, figure out who is committing these crimes and why. On the other side of things, Bryce's half-brother is looking for this famous artifact that would help the Fae get back into power, and he asks Bryce for her assistance, and things kind of converge from there and go on. This book was 800 pages. I did not feel like it needed to be that long. I feel like Sarah J. Maas shoved too much world building in this first book, considering it's supposed to be a series. We have a lot of different magical creatures with paranormal powers. There are fae, there are werewolves, there are mermaids and mermales, whatever. There are angels, and there's this other group of beings which rule the whole world. There's a whole war against humans, and humans against all of these supernatural creatures going on in the other side of the world that we keep hearing about, that greatly influences Hunt's backstory. But I feel like a lot of the political stuff between the various factions could have been left for another book. Like, I can see, especially the ending, why she wanted us to be introduced to all of these creatures, but we didn't need to know so much about each individual character. I also feel like it was definitely very info dumpy, particularly in the beginning. Info dump, especially since I read a lot of fantasy, is not something I notice a lot, but like, I'm so used to it, I'm just like, this is how books are. But the fact that I noticed it instantly here, and it was just like, wow. It was like, okay, here's this character and here's their entire life and backstory, and now back to the plot and what conversation they were having. And it was just like, it happened over and over and over and over and over again. It was just like, can we have some mystery for later? Like, do we need to know all of that right now? This is said to be an urban fantasy, and I guess it is. I went back and forth about whether it was or not, being a big urban fantasy reader. This feels more like paranormal romance, which overlaps heavily with urban fantasy, but I guess I tend to think of urban fantasy as real world cities, but it can be in a completely fantastical city and we're still in an urban setting. Yeah, I feel like the plot kind of meandered a lot too. I really did enjoy like the mystery and the crime, searching and whatnot, but it just kind of got lost at certain points, and like we didn't know what to do with that there, so the pacing was weird in different places of the book because of that. Also, I don't know. I felt like this could have been 2 books. But all of those negatives aside, I did like it. I didn't hate it. I just didn't love it. So what I did love though was I liked Bryce, I liked Hunt, I liked Danica, who is the 3rd main character that, spoilers, I can't say much more about, but and I liked a lot of the secondary and tertiary characters, whether they were antagonists or not. And I liked the world. I just think that we could have been introduced to it more slowly over time, since this is supposed to be a series. So like, this could have been edited down, is my point. But what I really loved was the romance. It was a slow burn, and it slowly burned over the course of 800 pages. I liked that. It felt very realistic to me. They both have issues, and those issues didn't disappear. They kept dealing with the various issues as they came up, and they weren't, you know, it wasn't insta-love at all. Like, they were attracted to each other, but that's fine. Like, they don't need to be, they were attracted to each other, but they weren't like, oh, we need to have sex right away. And they also weren't like, oh, I'm in love with this person right away. It was like strangers, maybe even hate. That's stretching it a little bit. Hate to friends to lovers, and I did appreciate that a lot. The relationships between them and other characters and the various characters between each other were all really great. I enjoyed some of the bad guys. There are a couple of people who didn't get too much screen time that will probably show up later, and I like the way that was done, and I feel like that could have been done more with other characters as well. So I wound up giving this a 3.5 stars. And I read this for the Olympic Games prompt. I had to pick a prompt related to Hermes, and I picked Catechus, a book with a snake on the cover. It's there towards the bottom. This cover is absolutely gorgeous. So let's move on to the 3rd book. The 3rd book I'll talk about is actually the 7th book I read in the month of June. Is appropriate for the Olympic Games readathon because it was Percy Jackson and the Olympians book 1, The Lightning Thief. I have had this book since December last year, I think. Kept renewing it because it was still available, and then the library was closed. I finally read it. It was the impetus to join this readathon and to get this book read. I read the physical book, but I forgot I hadn't filmed this video and returned it earlier this week, so I don't have it, but here's the cover. This is a middle grade fantasy series, and we're following Percy Jackson, who is a demigod, basically, but doesn't know it. Percy is 11 years old. He has ADHD and dyslexia, and constantly gets into issues and problems in schools. He has been enrolled and kicked out of 6 schools in his 11 or 12 years of life. I think it's 11 or 12. And he's on his last one, and he's not sure what will happen. He doesn't know who his father is, and his mother is currently in an abusive relationship. And Percy basically finds out randomly that his best friend is not human, and one of his teachers is not either, or 2 of his teachers actually, by accident. And he also finds out what his mother has been sort of hiding from him, that he is a demigod, and he should be attending the Camp Half-Blood. So after being attacked oddly one too many times, Percy and his mother drive out to Camp Half-Blood, and then she is attacked. But Percy makes it into the camp while she does not. And the story goes from there. Percy trying to find out who his father is, how to save his mother, and meeting the other half-blood demigod children. Somewhere in the city, y'all. So, I gave this 3 stars. I didn't hate it. I just didn't love it. It wasn't bad. What I really enjoyed, I think it was a relatively unique story. There is a cartoon series on Cubo that my dad used to watch like regularly, and so I watched too. That's somewhat similar. The half-blood children of a lot of the Olympic gods find out when they're in middle school, high school years, and they come together to learn about themselves and their powers and to defeat the bad guy, which in that case is Hades. Here, though, what I really have to give to Rick Riordan is the fact that it's very true to Greco-Roman mythology, Greek mythology in particular. So the ending wasn't typical to what a lot of books and shows based on Greek mythology do, at least in modern times. I like how it doesn't shy away from the fact that all of these Greek gods are out here sprinkling their children, leaving on children all over the place on Earth, because that's true to the mythology. I like the bad guy wasn't stereotypical Hades for modern people, because Hades was not a bad guy. He was a dark god, the god of the underworld, but not a bad guy. And the motivations for a lot of people were appropriate. This wasn't a moralistic story, which is what I think a lot of modern day authors and writers for shows do with the Greek myths. So I like that. There was one part that seemed random, just and a plot convenience, which I didn't like. I liked it for what it was, but for the reason it was there, it was like, why? That's just to kill time. That's literally all this is. There was no point otherwise. I'm curious about the rest of the story, but I'm not like, I need to finish this series, so that's why I think I gave it 3 stars. It's middle grade, and not really my thing. I don't hate it, but I didn't love it. So yeah, the last book I will talk about, I had issues at the end of the month. I was trying to figure out what to read to finish my prompts. I did finish Heaven Official's Blessing, book 1, so that fulfilled another prompt in the Olympic Games readathon. The Undead prompt, I think it was. Yeah, the Ghost King read a book with undead, and literally all of these heaven officials are deceased, and yeah. So I finished that, but I was really craving romance, and I had planned to read the first book reread the first book, the Dresden Files, for the reread prompt, but I really wanted romance, and I was concerned about that prompt. That was the last one I needed to finish out. And I switched to Changes, which is later in the Dresden Files series, because I felt like I didn't need to reread the entire series, just the last 4 books, and I have Changes already. I wanted to read a physical book, which is the other thing. I read the Lightning Thief, and I was going to read another romance book, but I realized I hadn't read the 2 before it, so I wound up picking, finally, What Price Love by Stephanie Lawrence. This is book number 13 in the Synopsis series. This is a series that is one of my favorites. I mentioned it in my series I want to complete that is still ongoing video. I like the Synopsis. This is Regency era England. We have the Synopsis, for the most part, the main group, 6 cousins that are not quite your usual Regency gentlemen. They've been in war, and so they're not quite as tamed. They have connections with the underbelly of English society, and as well as the ton. We have dukes, we have earls, we have viscounts, whatnot. Now, that was the original 6. At this point, we are moving on to like cousins and men tangentially related. So this is not quite the same generation. They're like younger members of the family or connected. Anyway, this book we follow Dylan, who was in a previous book. He is the cousin to so he's the cousin to Felicity or Flick, and who married Demon in one of the first original 6 books. Dylan, we know because he was in a spot of trouble, and like figuring out who he was and then saving him was kind of the plot of Felicity and Demon's book. So Dylan is now all grown up and apparently a super hottie. All the women want him for their daughters, or all the daughters want to marry him because he's so good looking. I don't remember Dylan being that good looking when he was younger in the previous book, so excuse to reread that. But Now he is mouth-wateringly hot, and that's so annoying how much it's mentioned in this book. That aside, Dylan is now in charge of the Register, which is this book of all the horses raced in England. It's a book that's created by this governing body of gentry or whatever, and it's a secret so that people who bet on horses, who race on horses, can't cheat, basically. Now, on the other side, we have Miss Priscilla Darling, who is following her brother to who got kicked out of the house because he doesn't want to be the heir to the estate and do all that. He wants to work with horses. So Priscilla comes to Dylan basically to try to find out why her brother is in town and all of a sudden interested in this horse register. So they meet, and Priscilla is also like this drop-dead gorgeous woman. And the thing is, like, it's not like none of the other couples in the other books weren't good looking, but these two are so good looking that people want them to just get married, so they're out of the marriage mark, and, you know, everybody can go back to, you know, realistically looking for someone else to marry and not just, like, falling in love with these two looks. These two are so used to using their looks to get ahead, they're kind of like butting heads or whatever. She's trying to see the register, he's not trying to show it to her, and she doesn't want to tell him that her brother is in trouble, but she doesn't know where her brother is, and it's a whole deal that's amusing to me, and I liked their coming together. I think what was also different in this particular one was the fact that they had sex pretty early on, and it was on both ends like, we're just doing this. This is historical romance, so like that doesn't happen very often, or if it does, it's super illicit and parties feel guilty or like we have to marry each other. That wasn't a thought in either of their heads pretty early on. They were just like, I'm here for the pleasure, and I appreciate that. Like, go. Not something I see very often in historical romance. So I read the ebook for this and then realized I hadn't read the book before either, so my last week of reading in June was tumultuous because of all of this book changing. But I enjoyed it, as I do every Sister novel, and I can't wait to read the next ones. I gave this a 4-star, and did this fulfill any prompt? So no, this was just a fun read because I decided that the first book I read in June, Kitty Goes to Washington, would fulfill the last prompt number 7, to reread a book, bring a book back from the dead, reread it, and that would fulfill the last prompt number 7 for the Olympic Games readathon, to bring a book back from the dead and reread it. Therefore, this was just for me, and I enjoyed it immensely. That was the last book I read in the month of June. Let me know if you've read any of these books or books from any of these series down in the comments down below. Also, let me know if you participated in the Olympic Games readathon and how did you do. Like this video if you liked it. Please hit the subscribe button if you want to see more. I have an entire reading playlist you can see on my main page there, as well as the other playlists for the other types of content that I have. Do check it out. Hit the notification bell if you are looking forward to my mid-year freakout tag video or my mid-year stats check-in video. They will be coming soon, as will the first half, my mid-July reading wrap-up. Those are the next reading videos coming from me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!